Doctor Who in the late 1980s was filled with behind-the-scenes drama, hiatuses, firings, and ultimately the cancellation of the show. One of the most notorious moments is the unceremonious exit of the Sixth Doctor, portrayed by Colin Baker. The Sixth Doctor is one of my absolute favourites, a sentiment shared by many Doctor Who fans. However, Colin's early exit shaped public perception of both the show and his performance. Today I want to discuss the 1985 hiatus, how Colin Baker was fired from Doctor Who, how the expanded universe attempts to give him a proper regeneration, and why you should give the Sixth Doctor a chance.
Doctor Who axed by the BBC.
It could have been slightly better written.
On February 27th, 1985, it was announced that Doctor Who would end at the conclusion of its current season.
Television's Time Lord is to take a rest.
TARDIS won't be taking him anywhere for 18 months.
For 18 months.
When the present series ends in 5 weeks' time.
The Doctor Who Appreciation Society is up in arms. They've called the decision horrifying and staggering.
I think it's important to say that before this, Colin was enjoying a somewhat successful season of Doctor Who. Season 22, his first full season as the Doctor, maintained its high audience share of between 6.5 to 8 million viewers, consistent with Davison's last 2 seasons. The show was doing fine. It wasn't a ratings disaster. The main reason for the show facing its end was a change in management.
The controller of BBC One, Michael Grade, made the decision a month before the new series was due to start production.
But the BBC says it wants to save money to make other drama shows.
Michael Grade's gone on holiday, no wonder.
He's trying to escape because I would have got him this morning.
Would you?
Yes, and said just what's going on, you know.
Michael Grade became the BBC controller and was very vocal about his dislike for Doctor Who. He stated multiple times that he thought it was rubbish and pathetic. And look, 22 seasons is nothing to turn your nose up at. It's an incredibly impressive run. The higher-ups just believed that the budget could be better spent on new ideas rather than investing in a show that they considered outdated, overly violent, with embarrassing visual effects.
I thought it was pathetic. I mean, I'd seen Star Wars, and then I had to watch these cardboard things probably clonking across the floor, trying to scare kids. You know, you just sit and laugh at it.
In a way, Michael Grade was right. Doctor Who just didn't have the budget it needed to compete with other programs. It was cheap. That's something that Doctor Who fans and he can agree on. It's just a solution to the problem that we disagree with. Doctor Who needed more money. Even shooting the series on film would have increased the look of the show instantaneously. But it's clear that they believed that they didn't have the money for that and wanted to direct that budget onto new shows. And that's his prerogative as the BBC controller. Yet, the show wasn't going to die that easily. Doctor Who fans launched a campaign to save the show, one that couldn't be ignored by BBC producers. Michael Grade became enemy number one by Doctor Who fans and casual viewers alike.
The Earthman, known as Michael Grade, has achieved a mighty victory for our cause. He must be located and cybernized immediately.
Michael Grade was on holiday when the news broke, but I doubt that even he could have shielded himself from the screeching tones of the charity single Doctor in Distress. Ultimately, the show returned to the screens with Trial of a Time Lord, a 14-part adventure where the Doctor faces against the Valeyard, a mysterious Time Lord who is intent on finding the Doctor guilty, on interfering with the universe. Which, you know, the Doctor is guilty of that, but he does it with such style. And if the Doctor is found guilty, he will pay with his life. Depicting the Doctor on trial, while the show itself faced scrutiny, created a clear parallel. Its true jury was the viewing public. What was Doctor Who's final verdict from its audience? Although the audience appreciation figures increased from the previous season, overall viewing numbers were much lower. The most watched episode was the final part, attracting 5.6 million viewers, a significant drop from last season's lowest rated episode, which had 6 million viewers. Essentially, the high audience from season 22 did not return. Had the media backlash convinced the general public that the show was awful? If Doctor Who was to survive, something had to change. 1986. Colin received a phone call from John Nathan Turner, the producer of Doctor Who. I've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is that the series is happening again next year. The bad news is I've been asked to replace you. Colin was in shock. In issue 324 of Doctor Who magazine, he said that he was waiting for John to reply saying, "But I refused and insisted that you must stay." But the words never came. In October 1986, John Nathan Turner, the producer of Doctor Who, was asked by Jonathan Powell, head of series and serials, to fire Colin Baker. Powell and BBC One controller Michael Grade had previously put the show on hiatus in 1985, and now, faced with worse ratings than the previous season, they finally had enough ammo to wipe Doctor Who out once and for all. But they didn't. Oddly, it seemed that Powell and Grade were looking to revamp the show, even contacting Sidney Newman, the head of drama during the show's original run, a person who was instrumental in the creation of Doctor Who. During a meeting, Sidney Newman suggested bringing back Patrick Troughton, and bringing back an older Doctor would never happen, right? Right? Ultimately, they took away one key conclusion from that meeting. Colin Baker had to go. Why was Colin the fall guy? Why did he have to pay for the show's sins? Folks, we're about to enter speculation territory. All of these are based on cast and crew's personal opinions and are not to be treated as fact. There is one rumour touted by Peter Davison that it wasn't Colin who was meant to be replaced, but John Nathan Turner. Colin, in Doctor Who magazine 324, said, "Peter Davison told me this, that he had sat next to Michael Grade on an airplane and had gotten a strong impression that it wasn't me, but John Nathan Turner that Grade was after." Being a kind of corporate game player, Grade thought by telling the producer to sack his lead actor, he'd force that producer to resign. He wanted John to point blank refuse to sack me, but John called his bluff and he sacked me instead. Gary Downey, an assistant floor manager / production manager, had this to say when hearing the rumours. "This is not right. John wanted to resign from the show. Michael Grade stopped him. Grade couldn't get rid of John. He wasn't John's boss." Which is a statement that seems to ring true. Nathan Turner would go to oversee the show until its conclusion in 1989, even though he constantly protested about running the show. His passion was in soap operas, and he had always wanted to work on one. Was he locked in Doctor Who jail as punishment over the hiatus protest? Gary continued, stating that Grade had a personal vendetta against Baker, citing an alleged romantic relationship with Colin's ex-wife, Lisa Goddard. "She was Michael Grade's best friend. The divorce was acrimonious, and she moved into Michael Grade's house while she was getting over the divorce, and I'll say no more. He did not want Colin working for the BBC." Michael Grade has gone on to say that his decision to axe Doctor Who was not a personal attack. He purely felt the show had run its course. He's even said that he enjoyed the 2005 series because it was brought up to date. Ultimately, wherever the truth may lie, Colin did not appear to film his regeneration sequence. So, why did Colin refuse? In 1987, in an interview with The Sun, he said, "They actually wanted me to come back and do 4 more episodes, just so I could be killed off and fit in with their plans. I told them what they could do with their offer." He didn't just reject it due to being hurt. The main issue was timing. At the BFI promotional screening for the season 23 Blu-ray set, Colin explained that he was told in November he was fired and that filming wouldn't happen until March/April, meaning he would have to continue to promote the show in this time. And he said, "I'll be honest, I was hacked off. I saw no reason to be nice to them." When he said he'd do a whole series and then regenerate, he never heard back. In later years, he regretted not coming back for one final story. "I forgot about you the fans. I was being brutally selfish, and at the time I just felt annoyed because I loved that part and I thought I had more to offer. Unfortunately, Colin did not get to end his era the way he should have. Instead, Sylvester McCoy dressed up as him and donned a curly wig. Not the finest way for the Sixth Doctor to depart our screens. Yet, the past cannot be changed. Not one line. I honestly do still dream that Grade will turn up to my doorstep and say it's all been a terrible mistake. But I realise that this will never happen now. Although his on-screen departure wasn't as dignified as one would hope, the Doctor Who universe of expanded media tried to rectify that. There are 2 entries into the wider canon, a novel titled Spiral Scratch and an audio drama series called The Last Adventure. The first case was a novel titled Spiral Scratch by Gary Russell, released in August 2005. The multiverse is shrinking, from an infinite number of universes to only 117,863. But not to fear, the Doctor and Mel are hot on the case. They land on Hiatus, a planet holding the vastest repository of knowledge throughout the cosmos, where an old friend of the Doctor's has been murdered. Time isn't making any sense. It's falling apart, and only the Doctor and Mel can save the day, but it will cost the Doctor his life. The story leads right up to the opening of Time and the Rani, and implies that the Doctor was already dying when he sacrificed his own energy to save the universe. The Rani's attack on the TARDIS was the final blow that sent him to his death. I personally haven't read this novel. I prefer non-fiction when I'm reading, so I won't be giving a verdict on whether I recommend it or not. Yet there is another telling of events for the Sixth Doctor's regeneration in the form of an audio adventure that I rate quite highly. The Last Adventure is a 4-episode audio drama box set by Big Finish Productions. For those unaware of Big Finish's output, Big Finish releases audio dramas of original Doctor Who stories featuring full casts. So it's like television Doctor Who, but without the visuals. In this 4-part series, each episode tells the story of the Doctor encountering the Valeyard throughout many different periods of this incarnation's life, leading to his regeneration in episode 4, The Brink of Death. The Doctor and Mel are having one of their typical adventures. Lizards, high-speed chases, the usual. When they return to the TARDIS, a fault is detected. When the Doctor goes to fix it, he is replaced by the Valeyard. Why is the Doctor trapped in the Matrix? And why doesn't Mel remember what he used to look like? It's all leading to the Valeyard's final revenge of the Doctor. One where he won't make it out alive. Like Spiral Scratch, this story leads into Time and the Rani, and implies that the Doctor dies by radiation that only affects Time Lords. It's a fitting end for the Sixth Doctor. He's still grumpy at times, but ultimately, he's heroic and kind. Thematically, it sets up why the Seventh Doctor becomes more devious, someone who is willing to scheme and plot in order to stop a menace. You can listen to each episode separately, since they are only loosely linked together due to the Valeyard's involvement. The first 3 episodes feature companions exclusive to Big Finish, which might be daunting for new listeners, but the Regeneration episode works pretty much standalone, since it features just Mel. I've animated the final episode in its entirety if you want to experience it with visuals. The animation is a great way to dip your toes into Big Finish if you've never tried an audio adventure before. For me, this is the most definitive departure for the Sixth Doctor, especially because Colin performs it himself. In a behind-the-scenes feature on the Big Finish YouTube channel, Colin jokes that all the other Doctors after him are illegitimate because he never officially regenerated.
He had no legitimacy because I had never regenerated. He was a pretender.
But now after this adventure, he has given them the seal of approval. Although Colin Baker didn't get the departure I believe he deserved on screen, saying that he was fired because he wasn't any good is completely unfair. It's important to remember that every actor who has played the Doctor has faced criticism for their performance. People will blast popular Doctors like David Tennant as being soap opera-like and his character being egotistical, even though that was an intentional choice. Remember when they used to write characters that had flaws on television? Just because one Doctor's era is more popular than another's, it shouldn't mean that you're not going to give those other Doctors a chance. Many fans online cry out that Colin's Doctor was saved by Big Finish, which portrayed him as a kinder character. However, I think his original TV run is still enjoyable, if sometimes uncomfortable, to watch. And now with The Last Adventure, he has been given a departure he deserves, just far too many years late. But in true Doctor Who fashion, the end is only the beginning. The Last Adventure was released in 2015, and Colin is still recording newer audios to this day. So if you haven't given his Doctor a chance, I recommend giving him a go. His era is filled with questionable morals and controversial choices. The Doctor isn't the Doctor we once knew. He's dangerous and sometimes very unkind. But at his core, he's still the Doctor, whether you like it or not. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Josh Nez YouTube channel.